which players are set to smash and help you win your matchup in Week 11? We're about to tell you. Welcome back to the Fantasy Endgame. I'm Pierre, he's Chris, and we're here as always to give you our boom picks. These are the guys we think are going to go off and bring huge point totals your way. Before we start, let me remind you that support for Fantasy Endgame is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below the waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. It's called the Performance Package. Join over 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer. If you use promo code ENDGAME, you get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Just use code ENDGAME for anything on manscaped.com. All right, let's get to the picks. Chris, who's your first boom?
Well, we talk a lot about the rookie post-bye bump. Like, rookies get a bump after the bye. And I don't think anybody got a bigger bump after the bye than Isaiah Pacheco, because the Chiefs, apparently, the coaching staff got together during the bye and said, we don't want Clyde Edwards-Helaire even on the field anymore. It was all Isaiah Pacheco. 16 carries. No other running back even got a carry. Yes, Jerick McKinnon got some targets and ran some routes, but Isaiah Pacheco almost ran as many routes as Jerick McKinnon as well. So this looks like the staff got together and said, Pacheco's our guy. We're going to ride him the rest of the season. And he gets an absolute smash spot this week against the Chargers. Second worst in terms of fantasy points to running backs. One of the worst in terms of yards per carry, yards per game. Pretty much any metric you want to find when it comes to running backs versus the defense, the Chargers are one of the worst. And we know this offense is going to give Pacheco many chances to score. He was good on his 16 carries as well last week. He averaged almost 5 yards per carry. So he's got the explosion. He's got the burst. He's a good between the tackles runner. We know this offense will give him plenty of touchdown upside. He may catch a pass or two. But I just think in this matchup, with the usage he's going to get, he should absolutely smash, and I think he has to be in all lineups this week.
Yeah, that Chargers run defense has been really bad, and sadly, with the lack of weapons, just don't think they can put up the points and force the Chiefs to have to pass as much as they want to. So Pacheco definitely in a great spot. All right, now, when you think about great spots and defenses you just want to stream against, we have talked a lot about the Houston run defense because they are pretty much the only run defense worse than the Chargers. But I'm not going with a running back against the Houston Texans. I'm going with a wide receiver because it's going to be Washington who faces Houston this coming week. And Washington just really doesn't have a running back that you can trust to smash. But you know what? I trust their wide receivers, especially Terry McLaurin, their number one guy, because it just so happens, that's right, Houston not good against the pass either. You might not know it because they're so busy giving up rushing yards, they just don't have to give up passing yards. But you know what? Like I said, this Washington offense can't afford to sit back and run it 20 times because neither of their running backs have really been impressive. But Terry McLaurin has been putting up solid numbers, even with Taylor Heinicke at quarterback. This Houston Texans defense has given up the most yards per target out of any defense, 9.72 to wide receivers. Terry McLaurin is a guy who can make big plays down the field. And so I feel like this may not be the highest scoring of games this week, but if there's a guy I think can put up big numbers, it is Terry McLaurin. Doesn't matter who's behind center for him. So I like him to kind of finally break through and have another big performance. All right, let's go to the next boom pick. Chris, who you got?
Well, we talk about the Chargers and the Texans against running backs. What about the Cardinals against tight ends? They have been terrible against tight ends this year. We saw Tyler Higbee, who was pretty much unstartable, had a really nice game against this defense, and now they have to face George Kittle, who's coming off a bad game. I'm sure people are worried about George Kittle right now because they think there's too many weapons here. It can't support George Kittle. Because this Cardinals defense is so bad against tight ends. Only one tight end has scored less than double-digit PPR points against this defense, and that was the Panthers tight end. I don't even know who the Panthers tight end is. I don't even know if the Panthers had a tight end. I didn't even know they did. They used a tight end. Every other offense that has played this defense, the tight ends have had at least 5 catches. They've all gone for double-digit PPR points, and they've scored 7 total touchdowns against this defense. This is just one of those defenses tight ends go off against. It's almost guaranteed. George Kittle is still a stud. He's going to get more involved this week. He's going to bounce back in a big way. Don't worry about George Kittle. Anywhere you have him, put him in your lineups. I think he's going to be one of the best tight ends in Week 11.
You know what? I'm going to go with the tight end too, believe it or not. Now, not quite as big a name, and a guy that is kind of still under the radar because didn't do much early in the season, but that is Dalton Schultz because he was hurt. I mean, that's it. That's the bottom line. Very early on, had that PCL issue, missed a couple weeks, and then even though he was back, just wasn't himself. And of course, let's not forget, how could we forget good old Cooper Rush, was the quarterback for several weeks to start the season. He just didn't throw to Dalton Schultz. Well, now it's pretty obvious that Dak Schultz connection that we thought might be really strong, it is in place. We've only seen it for a couple of weeks, so I think people are still a little skeptical, not calling Schultz a guy that is a must start. He's a must start, trust me. Just the last 2 games, he's gotten 12 targets, and we've seen, I think more importantly, that behind CeeDee Lamb, who is clearly a stud, I think Schultz is number 2 in line here in terms of being the top receiver for Dallas. Michael Gallup is back, but he's not really back. As you can see, he just hasn't been putting up numbers. He's not himself. You can't blame him, just coming off an ACL tear. He's clearly not at full speed. So I think it's going to be Schultz who is really the number 2, and he's got that connection with Prescott. He's going to put up some numbers. This game, I think Cowboys-Vikings should be another shootout here with Minnesota. Could be a lot of points in play. I think Schultz against a defense that, let's face it, that's not why they're winning. This is not a shutdown defense, right? And they're really not great against the tight end either. Not Arizona level bad, but not great against the tight end. They're bottom 10 here. I think Schultz has a really solid week and a guy that you definitely want to be starting if you have him. All right, let's go one more round here. Give me your last boom pick.
It's a tough week when I'm picking tight ends and quarterbacks. And it's a really tough week when I'm picking Aaron Rodgers to boom this week. I've been really down on Aaron Rodgers all season long. He hasn't been great, but I think he has a good week here in Week 11 against the Titans. And one thing about the Titans, they are a pass funnel defense. So having that weapon now, he's still got Allen Lazard, Aaron Jones out of the backfield. He has tons of weapons here. I think this is going to be another big game for Aaron Rodgers. Maybe a vintage Aaron Rodgers performance here at home against a bad secondary. Really liking Aaron Rodgers this week. I think if you're trying to stream QB and he's on your waivers, he's my number 1 QB streamer this week. Think he has a big game.
Yeah, funny how quickly things change here. Aaron Rodgers now all of a sudden looks like Aaron Rodgers again. Who would have thought? All right, my last pick. Don't forget about Tyler Boyd. Coming off the bye week, coming off a pretty quiet week because it was all Joe Mixon the week before. But look, this is a good matchup for him. Going against the Steelers, don't be fooled into thinking the Steelers defense all of a sudden is great because TJ Watt came back. They still are very susceptible in the secondary because, look, they happened to face Andy Dalton and kind of an anemic passing offense last week. Steelers are still second worst in terms of giving up fantasy points to wide receivers, and they've given up the most touchdowns to wide receivers. We know Jamar Chase isn't back yet. Joe Mixon, I mean, look, I'm not going to expect another 5-touchdown game. I'm just going to go out and say it right now. He's probably a little tired from running in the end zone so much the other week. Look, they're going to keep him fresh for the playoffs. This is a week where they're going to attack the real weakness of the Steelers defense, and that is the secondary. Minkah Fitzpatrick has been out. A lot of injuries in that secondary. So I think Tyler Boyd goes to being a really strong start in this game. Of course, T. Higgins, you're starting him no matter what, but I like Boyd's chances to have a big game as well. He's done that a couple of times already. People just forget because we have short-term memory, and anything beyond 2 weeks ago, it's like ancient history. Don't sleep on Boyd. He's a really strong start this week. All right, that's our take on which players we think will boom in Week 11. Don't forget our start, sit, trade, waiver wire coverage, everything you need to help win, and our Week 11 playlist for fantasy. It's all right here.